Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Robots of Red Tape. As always, I am your host, Nick Shutt, and to everybody out there listening, just want to thank you for your participation. Thank you for being the best part of the show, and thank you for your support. It's awesome that you guys listen and find value from this. Really excited today to do a special episode, bringing my friend Josh Thiel back and his friend Ray Meiring. We're talking today about about whether or not AI is actually providing value, if it's if the juice is worth the squeeze. As we get going, Josh, Ray, do you mind giving everybody like a little intro about yourself, your background, and kind of how you guys got here?
Ray, you take it away.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, so thank you so much, Nick, for having me on here, and Josh, great to be with you again. Yeah, I'm Ray Meiring, CEO, co-founder of QorusDocs, founded the company in Cape Town, South Africa back in 2012, immigrated to the US in 2015, and have been here coming up for 11 years now. But when we started this journey, like the big problem people were dealing with back in the early 2010s was like, how do we generate documents and create like scalable documents? And that's where we got our like journey started. But then it moved on to, well, what's a high value document that everyone's creating? Proposals and RFPs and bid and sales teams. But more recently, as AI has picked up, hey, creating the document's not really the problem. How do we get the right message into that document and make sure that it's all about value? And that's kind of the evolution that we've been through as of recent.
Awesome, thank you, Josh.
Yeah, quick background on me, Josh Thiel. A long career in special operations where I fell in love with technology because I love to super empower people with technology, right? You're always going to have people forward doing something, right? People are always in the loop somewhere, but when you can super empower them with tech, whether that's radios or optimization of the battlefield so they can see it further and faster they can with their own eyes, right? Things like that I fell in love with. Pertinent to this discussion today for AI, I started Heinz's AI Center of Excellence, where I got to meet tons and tons of AI companies. That's actually where Ray and I met. And currently, the some of the work we're doing that relates to AI is we're building a AI system for maneuver warfare to be able to outmaneuver the best maneuver commanders in the world with AI.
It's amazing, man. No, really amazing. And thank you both for taking your time to chat with me today. I know everybody here is very busy. Yeah, as we start thinking about like AI implementation from a practical perspective, one of the things that everybody talks about is that AI is saving people time. And as you guys think about, from both of your perspectives, what is the real transformation that AI is driving that you think most people are missing? And Josh, I'll kick it off to you for the initial start.
Yeah, so the core value right now, and there's a lot of layers to this, right? But just at the individual level, is it's my research assistant, right? I can spin up on something to have an intelligent conversation at a deeper level. I can understand them quickly if we're trying to make a business deal, what they bring to the table. I can spin up on my kids' homework really fast, right? I can research other projects that someone has done, and then what I love about it is when it's got the links in it so I can go deeper into a journal article or the actual source reference material. So that ability to have that person that goes down to the stacks in the library and researches for me for like a week, but it happens in a minute is invaluable for human productivity. It's incredible, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that, Josh. I find the same kind of added benefit. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I was trying to understand how many objections our sales team was getting on calls, right? So in the old days, I would have to interview them or have them ask them to like capture a field. They were getting objection on pricing or on timing into CRM. Yesterday, I just went and said, go analyze all the call recordings for the last 2 years, listen to every word that the customer said, and come back and tell me what the top five objections were. And of course, that was fast, to your point, Nick. Like it's about speed. Yes, that was fast. But to synthesize that amount of data that's unstructured in that time frame, that was simply not possible before. In fact, we wouldn't have even tried it because we
Mhm.
just didn't have the humans to go and read all that stuff. So, from a research point of view, like closing that gap between the knowledge that we have across the company into a decision that we can make or an action that we can take, that's really the time shortener that I'm seeing an understated value of AI.
Yeah, I completely agree with both of you. I think that, the ability to have, essentially like a librarian at your beck and call for anything is awesome. But also I love that I feel like especially as like we used to try to do a lot of this or some of this with like going online and Googling things and searching. And I think that as I just think the internet's really gotten cluttered with a lot of
Right.
junk that we don't care about, and it's not actually real information. Like these sites that are like clickbait sites or what have you, and they're trying to drive like. And one of the things like this is awesome use case for it. One of the most useful ways I've found to use AI is actually like if I'm buying something online, I'm asking it for discount codes, right? And I've saved thousands of dollars on buying stuff that I was already going to buy anyway, just because it was able to cut through the noise, right?
Right. That's awesome.
So
Super.
I'll give you like another crazy one, or let's put this in some real context, right? I was looking at cutting a deal and doing some support for a company that needs to sell something to the army, to the military industrial base, right? Because we're starting to onshore and produce more. We always keep this organic industrial base in play, so we've got a certain level of capability at like Rock Island Arsenal and some others, right? And as we're assessing the market, right? Assessing the market, taking the data, analyzing the data, literally with just a prompt, I could chart out, oh wow, there's not just one client. There's three organic arsenals, right, that still produce things. Below that, there's six depots. Then there's one level below that. All of those are using the tech that we were looking at selling. And there's actually 45 targets. I know the locations now. I can get a point of contact for it. I've got the depth on what each one does. And I know their higher command, who that is, in case I want to go to them and cut a bulk deal as well. That happened in the stroke of a key, right?
Right.
Total market analysis, bam, right?
Mhm.
It's just kind of unbelievable that you can do that. And I come back to the human in the loop function, right? What defined the great leaders and great scientists and everybody else before was still asking the right question. What is the market need? Where's the gap we could solve? Where's the slowest part of this process we could fix? We're still the really smart people in the human loop is asking the correct question still at the prompt and then asking the following question, the following question, the following question. So the power and then the core skill of asking the right question, starting with why, right?
Absolutely. 100%. Anything to add to that, Ray?
No, I couldn't agree more. I think asking the right question, keeping that human in the loop, that's going to be a critical skill that we're going to need to develop. We're researching at scale, we're reading at scale, we're performing actions at scale, but it's about asking sending the right prompt in, which starts with the question. Right? Starts with that question, and that's going to differentiate the great users of AI from the mediocrity out there. It's just getting that right question in the right place.
Absolutely. And but obviously, like I think, these are all awesome benefits. But as you look at what we actually need to do to really build up and scale up this industry, when you start thinking about the trillions of dollars we need to spend on compute, increasing power, like our power, well, we need to spend money on power grids anyway. But like, I think I read we need to 3x our power production over the next 10 years to meet the demand. You look at the amount of water that we use in data centers, the number of data centers that need to be built, all of this infrastructure. Do you guys really believe that AI is worth this level of global investment, and why do you think so, or why not?
Right over to you.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those really tough questions and like a super philosophical one to go backwards and forwards on. It's definitely a couple of glasses of wine dinner time debate. That one. But, I'm just thinking about it like, yes, there is going to be a cost, and there's going to be obviously a financial cost, and there could be an infrastructural like footprint cost to this thing. But what's the benefit to it? Well, the benefit is that we're going to see productivity increase at scales that we've never seen in the history of humankind. Now, does that productivity gain and that like artificial intelligence that's there like work back into those environmental challenges that we've got in those investment areas? And does this create a loop that actually resolves itself over time? I think if you look at each of those in isolation, there's an argument to be said, well, okay, we're gonna suck up resources, we've got to build more power. But we have to look at, okay, well, what does that mean? What's the output of that? And how does that output return back into solving some of those infrastructural problems so that they're less of an issue. I mean, still the money piece is going to be there, but how do we make sure that these data centers run more efficiently, are more efficient on the power grid, consume less natural resources so that we can continue to get those benefits from it. I don't have a straight up answer to that, but those are some of the philosophical things that run through my mind.
So Ray went like 30,000 foot, macro level, which I love to play there. I'll go down to like this super tactical level, right? And this is a problem that we are facing at, the last few companies we work for. What, no kidding, when you're trying to sell something that has AI in it, is the ROI of AI, right? And I think, right, we've kind of discussed already in the call that first order of like I'm faster, right? Research assistant faster for my person, my team. But as I started to chart this, one of the big things that always pops out with me is your SME time, your subject matter expert, right? And so you can imagine time if I've got like if I'm the fourth offset, right, my company, and we literally have like five people with PhDs in fluid dynamics and aerospace working on a hypersonic munition right now,
Hmm.
right? And I need to write a marketing paper, which I do right now. I need a one pager and I need a five pager done, right?
Hmm.
I just want them to put all their documents in there and then let me build the marketing paper using the marketing expertise that I've got. What we don't want and where the ROI fits is if I send it to them because they're the SMEs that in theory can do it, right? I'm spending PhD hours and those billable hours on a very high-end person, right? You want to keep the person that makes the fins on the rocket that can only make the fins on the rocket, making the fins on the
Yeah.
rocket
Right.
99% of their time,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so if we think about this from a business perspective, you start to dig deep and it's really hard to quantify this ROI of like how much money I'm saving because I'm not wasting my SME's time, right?
Mhm.
On a human level, whatever the person in whatever discipline researches, if someone like say to write a journal article, a professor, he's got this great knowledge, he wants to get it out to the body knowledge so people can take that and continue to move the ball forward. 1,000 hours of time to make a journal article, that's 1,000 hours he could be in the lab turning the next great idea, right? I want him to drop that down to like 10 hours, right, for humanity and to solve the problem. So there's this ROI related around SMEs that we have not found a good way to calculate yet.
Yeah, I completely agree that we haven't found a way to calculate it yet. And I also agree with you that these high-end folks with highly specialized knowledge, like we want them doing what they're specialized in as much as possible and maximizing that time there. And there are other things that I'd add to it is like, think about like the administrative burden that comes with researching and doing all of this and writing reports. And also in addition to that, the administrative burden, you look at doctors, right? Doctors in when they're seeing patients as somebody that has been in that space and just sold a healthcare company last year, um, a huge amount of their time is taken up doing, notes, right? And writing clinical notes and like super important part of the job. But like, and they should not be spending that much time there. That, there are absolutely tools out there now that will listen in with the patient when you're talking, when you're, doing your consult and will automatically generate notes and then you can just go through and like refine them, right? But also think that one of the most important parts of that is forcing human in the loop and creating workflows so that you can't just like copy paste the notes in. You have to go through and edit them and so that so that it's not just an AI generated note. It's the doctor has to go through and reread everything.
Right.
Hey, Nick,
Right.
let me run with that for a second.
Yeah.
So again, let's get into this really hard to classify ROI situation. So my mom was a nurse practitioner for years, right?
Mhm.
And she worked at a rural clinic with no doctor. So all of her notes would go in and a doctor was supposed to review those, right? A central doctor, right? For a second set of eyes. One, how often did it actually happen? Two, the amount of time that doctor's spending. But then let's look at the AI a different way. What if the AI could screen all of the notes on a patient or as they're writing them in? And if the AI can flag things like, oh, that, and the last three visits in the notes of the nurse practitioner, that means they're at high risk for something else, right? Or you're at high risk of maybe getting sued because they're missing something. right? So imagine you can put a dollar amount, like how much does it cost to get sued for that, right? At scale, and you could walk that backward into the value of AI. Again, really, really hard things to do to capture these ROIs, and then the opportunity to solve more problems with AI that we really are working hard to wrap our head around, and we don't have good models for these ROI captures yet, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that. I want to throw two additional scenarios into the mix. One is just the kind of human happiness level. All right.
Hmm.
So, and Josh, you know this, you worked in the RFP space. Everybody loves those RFPs that come in just before the Christmas holidays and then they're due on like January, like a New Year's Day. Or what we're seeing more and more of, you get an RFP on Wednesday and it needs to be delivered like 1 week later, and this thing's like 2,000 questions there. So the obvious benefit to that is, hey, I can answer questions faster and I can be more accurate in that. But the fact is that somebody doesn't have to work that weekend. They get to go home to their kids and their family. That's huge. You can't really quantify that. Like it's hard to put a number on that. We've looked at things like staff turnover and stuff, but it's a macro kind of KPI that. But there's a real human happiness element to I got the work done really quickly with AI. The other one, and this came from a customer. I was actually interviewing them on a webinar, and I was like, well, with AI, you can answer so many more RFPs, right? Doesn't that make sense? And this customer said, put the brakes on. I don't want to do more RFPs. I
Hmm.
want to do less that I'm going to win.
Hmm.
Okay, that's great. So how does AI help? Well, it scans those RFPs, identifies risk, looks at that body of knowledge that you have, that library of research, and said, you have a high propensity to win this one. Double down on this one, but don't go near that one. So it cuts back on that risk element there of responding to RFPs that you're not well suited to, and directs you into the ones that you'll probably win because you've got the right track record to be able to do that. That one's a bit easier to measure on the ROI scale because there's something tangible there, but it's not a productivity only play. It's more than that.
Hmm. Absolutely. And as I respond to solicitations, and submit proposals, one of the things that I always like to do, you know, whenever you write all, as you write all of this up, I like to go ahead and go and find out who these customers are, to your points, right? Both of you, Josh and Ray, figure out who they are, right? Figure out who likely in these organizations are going to be the ones that are going to be making some of the decisions around which direction this gets awarded, how it goes. Then I like to go out and find where is this specific agency or this specific company or this specific person talking about this body of work, whether it's modernization, IT modernization, whether it's industrial controls engineering, AI, data science, what have you. I'll go out and I'll download as much information as I can on, where they're talking about what they think. And then I'll literally take the proposal and drop it into AI along with all of this supporting documentation and tell it to go ahead, review all this documentation and find ways to make it so to use how their language and how they're communicating in this specifically, and then show me where and tell me why,
Right.
which allows the proposal to sound like to speak specifically to the points
Right.
that they are communicating about publicly, which will make it resonate more with the people who are reviewing it.
100%. Yeah. More
Yep.
personalized.
Right. And it's that's something that you can do that manually, right? Um, but it's not it just takes way, way, way longer. And and how much is it actually going to increase your chance to win entirely depends. But um, being able to do it in 5 minutes or 10, or in an hour that's just, well, the juice is worth the squeeze at that point, right?
Right. It's scale, and margins to winning are getting smaller and smaller. So if you can add that personalization element into that margin to win, that's
Mhm.
a big benefit.
Yeah. And at a philosophical level, how do you think we as a society should decide? Like, what do you think like the decision points should be as we think about whether resources like water and land, right? Which are like, I mean, these are zero sum games. Like, what do you think some of the variables we should consider? Like, should we spend them here or in AI or elsewhere?
Yeah. What do you think, Josh?
Um, let me deflect off the question for one second, because I think there's this other variable, right? We've talked about first order, we've talked about multi-order, which is really hard to capture the ROI. There's another thing that is really hard to capture, and that's the temporal ROI, or the ROI after time. And I think this is important because it's really hard to model and figure out. But I take my kid, for example, last week. I go tactical, then back up, right? My kid last week was doing his book report, and he read his book report on this kid that is climbing Mount Everest, essentially. And, we were talking about it, and all of a sudden he's talking to me about hypoxia and, you know, and how much less oxygen there is at the top, and then the recovery times if someone can survive. He's talking about the medical conditions around it. And I'm like, holy cow, man, that's all in that book. And he's like, well, no, Dad, I was talking with Google about it, right, in our house. And he's just asking questions. Like, he went like 18,000 layers deep. So you can imagine how much smarter is the current generation that has the ultimate research assistant through its entire life, and optimized learning tailored to them, right, for their entire life. How much smarter are they going to be? Productivity for humans, where do humans go? What problems does it enable us to solve? So there's first order, multi-order, and then there's this temporal nature that's almost impossible yet to model. But there's an ROI there that I can't even put my brain around how to measure yet, right? That's got to factor in somewhere as we look at the
Well,
resource equation. So I
well,
know
maybe it
I'm
does,
a little
Josh.
fun there.
Maybe that's the exact answer to that, because maybe we don't really know that calculation today,
Hmm.
right? But over time, as we're better enabled by this technology, we will get to the answer that will help us decide. We just hope that it's not too late, that we've kind of gone and messed a whole bunch of things up by that stage, which is typical human nature. But um, hopefully, we're smart enough to be able to figure it out, fix it, address it, keep moving forward. Yeah.
And I also think that, like, I mean, I think we are facing a lot of problems. And I don't mean like at a societal level, short term now. I mean, you look at things like, in the environmental damage, pollution, all these things. I think that a lot of they're known problems that we need to innovate our way out of. And I think that, frankly, these tools, and I'm not just talking generative, right? I'm talking like all different forms of AI. You start looking at agentic solutions, things like that. You start looking at, and other things that we can't even conceive of yet. The only way we're gonna get through these issues that are, we created, but we also wouldn't have had an industrial revolution if we weren't creating them.
Right.
Um, we need to innovate our way out of this, and I think that these tools can be properly used. I think they can be powerful tools to help us innovate our way out of these situations.
So maybe here's a different way to think about it that jumped into my head here. You kind of prompted me with those comments, and that's, if you go back to agricultural revolution, right, adding in fertilizer, right, not great for the environment, tapping away. The whole industrial revolution,
Mhm.
there's a full pull on the environment, on the planet, right? We kind of move into the age of the internet, right? More compute power needed. Right. So again, we're pulling on the earth, right? Making some efficiencies. But in the era of AI, the one thing that's different is the tech itself may then actually help us find the solutions, which is what you guys are saying. And no other revolution that we've had so far can help solve the problems on the resource drain it's also causing.
Mhm.
And that's a different game. It's a different level, right, to play at. So I'm back with you. I think it could solve the problems, but this is the first revolution that's happened where the thing can help solve the problems, right?
Mhm.
Right. Everything else has been about making us more productive in some ways, right? Industrial revolution, more productive. This is the first one that actually touches like problem solving and being cognitively smarter
Mhm.
collectively with AI to be able to get to those things. So I agree with you, Josh.
Yeah, and I think that, as you think about human society, I mean, we live in a world that is a linear supply chain, right? We go get raw resources from the earth, we refine them, we then we take them and create products with them, and then those products are used and then they're thrown away, right? And I really think for us as a civilization to move, like to continue to move forward, we need to move from a linear supply chain to a cyclical supply chain as much as possible, right? Look at power generation. There's only so long you can burn coal and burn fossil fuels to meet the needs, energy needs that we as a civilization will have, especially if you start looking at things like space travel, and going to other planets, becoming a multiplanetary civilization. You start looking at these prospects, you're going to need things like fusion power, right? You're going to need things that are more sustainable. Because like you can't, if we, go to Mars, you can't. You can't use fossil fuels on Mars because there are no fossils there, right? Well,
Right.
that we know of. As and so you start looking at all this, right? It's the challenges that are we have are very real, but the only way we're going to get through them and get to the other side is by innovating our way out of it.
Yeah.
Right. It's a time factor as well. I mean, like, can we do it fast? Can we do it fast enough? Because
Hmm.
there is permanent damage that is being caused. Some of it we can't get back up. It's gone. It's moved on. So can we do it in time? But that has to be kind of the perspective, is innovate ourselves out of these problems.
Yeah, Nick, I want to disagree with you on something that's real important, and that's when
Sure.
we're 80, sitting around drinking some bourbon somewhere. My son has promised to send me back a picture when he's on Mars of the creature from Predator, right?
Hmm.
And he is positive that he's going to find a fossil of the predator on Mars. So he's going to send us that picture, and then we'll know there's some fossil fuels somewhere. There's going to be some fossils in the form of an extreme creature on Mars. So
Can't
that'll be
wait.
good. I'm sure AI hopefully will help get him home when his ship is broken. Right?
Yeah. When I'm 80, I'm a living fossil by that stage.
There you go. Oh,
Maybe, unless
yeah.
my points are all new, right?
Mhm.
Back to this resource question, is it worth it? I'm not even sure that we can say is it worth it because I don't think we can stop the inertia. It's one of those arms races that I don't really want to do it, but I can't afford for somebody else to do it. Whether that's an individual that wants to keep competitiveness, right? Everyone keeps talking about it's not whether you're going to lose your job to AI, you're going to lose your job to the person that knows how to use AI. There's company to company efficiency. There's country to country efficiency, which is, one of the things that I'm working on for the maneuver warfare.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure we can stop the inertia, but I will say the rapid, unregulated kind of growth and build into the area, we've got to find a way to figure out, right? Both from a, just a risk of the systems and what they can do perspective, but into the resources as well. Like some states are surging because they want the revenue, but are they really suited to do it efficiently from a water and energy standpoint? Has
Mhm.
anyone ratcheted down on that, or do they just find a way to get the VC money in their area because they're right next to government funding in DC? Virginia is like the epicenter of data centers, right? California's got the VC money. So where we put them, I think has to be really well thought out to mitigate some of those risks. And right now, I think the commercial environment is driving that. And I think the government needs to look at that for a strategic resource efficiency standpoint, frankly. I like to get government involved. I like free markets to work normally, but in this case, it's a national security of your resources, right?
Mhm. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I also think that there's no one company or no one like VC fund has the ability to make those decisions, right? They're
Mhm.
not, and that's also not really that's not their goal. Their goal is to return profits to their investors and make money. I think that the government should be absolutely looking, and not saying that free markets shouldn't operate. They absolutely should, but they should be looking at where are the best places to build these things because of exactly resource concerns, or should we like be putting data centers in space? Like I know Google just released a paper about that, I want to
Right.
say in November or so. How should we best be doing this from an efficiency perspective? Because cooling in space is a lot easier than cooling here, right? So. we'll see. And so as we think about this,
Frankly,
go
space
ahead.
is like half as toxic as the ocean, right? Like if
Hmm.
you've ever operated in the ocean, right? Like it eats all my equipment, right? We've tried the under ocean data centers and power generation. It's just kind of rough there. So the space thing could be really interesting. And frankly, with the rapid acceleration of commercial space flight, it's 100 times more feasible, right? I was actually at a hackathon last night here on Purdue's campus, and there was a team in there, and they invented a very, very efficient portable condenser, right? So one of the ways you cool data centers, there's closed loop cooling, there's open loop cooling, which has a huge water draw off of it. So they've got for the facilities that are legacy, or for countries that maybe can't afford the big systems, they've got these small containers, and literally they're like $150, right?
Yeah,
Like you can put them everywhere, right? Massive, massive innovation. People are starting to attack the problems, right? And what's really great is that there's young people that understand the risk to problems to their own planet they're going to inherit, right?
100%. And and then like the last thing on the space piece is that it solar power is a lot more efficient when the sun's not coming through an atmosphere, right? So that makes the power generation piece a little bit more feasible. Absolutely. So but yeah, no, it's really cool to see folks doing that. But as you start thinking about companies, right? And these companies out here that are talking about how they are AI enabled, and they say themselves that we are AI enabled. What's the biggest lie companies tell themselves around this?
Ray, you got to do this. You got to.
Well, I think AI enabled is it's a great marketing term, right? I mean, it really is. Like, we got to be people enabled first to do it. We can roll out these tools like crazy, but if the people are not enabled to be able to actually get the benefit out of those tools, it's just another toolkit. I was just at the Chief Marketing and Business Development Forum for all these like legal CMOs, and sitting in some of those sessions, just listening to the discussions there, there are so many AI tools that are just being rolled out in these law firms. I mean, they've got everything, every conceivable tool, but the folks are still sitting in the room figuring out, what do I do with it? How do I use it? And most of it's just sitting there almost gathering dust or being like, make my email more concise. That's
Hmm.
what's, happening to this. So I think AI enabled is great, but it's human enabled to use AI. That's where this kind of misnomer is right now.
Yeah, I agree. Josh?
Yeah, this kind of comes into consumer protection, right? Like misrepresenting, capability. There's a big difference between I have algorithms that can tell me things, right? I have machine learning and then I have AI, right? Like there's different layers, different things, and everyone's using that umbrella term. It is so hard for a consumer to sort through what's real and what's not right now. It's just a huge problem, right? And I don't know how we get around that. I'd love to see, some more commercial applications to be like reviews on products, right? In the AI space that hasn't accelerated, but we could desperately need it, especially in the B2B land, right? There's also, just some government regulation, like can you lie to people about what you are, right? What qualifies you as being certified that you actually are using AI, right? Or are you just using it to get someone's attention on a marketing flyer, right? It's kind of tough. I think just like we didn't put, and I think Nick, you brought this up once to me in a conversation about the social media rollout that was so fast, right? No safety protocols for kids, no regulation, no factual, no like real thought about the fact that they're actually drugging all of us with dopamine drops, right? From the likes coming in.
Mhm.
We're in the same boat, right? Like the misuse of the terms is really unfair to everyone in the population, right?
I completely agree, and I've made my feelings on social media very, very clear for a long time, and and then but the thing that I also think about, right, especially dealing with young people as it relates to this, is like there's a lot of benefits to it, but you think about Google, right, or Google is. made their money selling our data or selling data, right? And you think about the amount of data that they can collect on you, what just from your internet traffic, where you go and what you search for. If when you're in a long two-way interaction with with say Gemini, right? The amount of data that they can collect on you is so much richer. And and what kind of protections do you as a person have around that, right? Um, I recorded another episode earlier this week, right? And this guy, he'd done a bunch of work at Rand Corporation, and one of the problems that they were really struggling with at one point, this was a while ago, was figuring out like looking at behaviors of um, the say you're trying to find like bad actors, criminals, right? Say sex criminals, what have you. How do you delineate traffic from people that are doing that and researchers that are looking for things like that, right? And it's just one of those really interesting problems that I'm sure people have solved by now, but I always have real big concerns around data and data privacy.
And I think it's valid concerns. I mean, we've got ChatGPT for healthcare stuff happening right now. So you're gonna go ask it about some of the most personal elements of your life. That's in there, and there's several others that are rolling out. Um, Now they claim not to be tracking the stuff. You can hit the temporary button, but who's really reading the small print behind this thing, where it says, we're actually just looking at some of this aggregated data or something like that. What is actually happening beyond that? Now, each of us personally need to decide, does it matter? Do I care that OpenAI has some of my personal, information in it? Maybe me personally, no, but someone else or like a group of people absolutely may.
Hmm.
Um, and I agree with, I think, was it Josh or you, Nick? Like, where's the guardrails on this thing? Who's actually policing this to make sure that what they're saying is actually happening?
Ray, building upon that, right? You talk about health information, right? The only thing more personal than that is what's going on in all of our own brains.
Right,
And when you think about the accuracy that like Amazon has to put up the product that it knows I need before I need it, right? And at the price point that I want, so it'll drop it just to get the sell, raise it if it knows I need it more. It knows more about me than myself, right? You are truly through data, right? Our own personal data. And then with AI, you are tracking and the inside of my brain.
right.
And that is a strange place to be. That's the probably the last sanctuary that we had for personal information to a degree.
Hmm.
And that can be mapped with just the data without actually putting something in my brain. And part of it is we're volunteering, right? Every
Right.
time we communicate. But sometimes it's happening, but we really don't even know. It's exploitation or exploration.
Right.
Uh, uh,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, you're being
Exploitation.
exploited,
It's
right?
it's like self-fulfilling,
Absolutely.
right? Like
Yeah.
No.
you were thinking this thing, then you got offered something. Now you're thinking about that thing that you just saw,
Yeah.
constantly because it's being flashed in front of you. So it knows you, but it's also kind of manipulating how you think or where you think you need something. I really need a new barbecue for summer. Right now, I'm like fixated on that thing
Yeah.
because I searched for a cleaner, but barbecues came up and now it keeps pushing that my way.
It
Hmm.
blows my mind, right? We are very restricted in the military for psychological operations. And, because there's like a resistance, right? We don't want to convince people what to think in America, right? That's kind of one of our principles, right? Free speech, right? So we actually don't enforce or use it to full effect for psychological operations.
Hmm.
So it's funny that we tie our own hands in the military on it in America because of those concerns, but literally we're letting it happen all over for companies marketing to the population and to my kids, right?
Hmm.
They're already
Yeah.
getting marketed to. And we're okay with it with total exploitation happening in the free market, but not necessarily for any government use. It's really weird that it's
Yeah.
like night and day.
No, but I also I agree. I think the thing that they're putting in our heads is ideas, right? And I think that's a lot lower stakes when you start looking at them wanting us to buy certain things, and a lot higher stakes when you start looking at I mean, like you look at all of these opinion, and I don't care what side you're on, these opinion news outlets, right?
Right.
That push out a message and push out specific messaging to people, and then you combine that with social media and how that's used to create, bubbles where you're surrounded by people that only think the same way you do, and you can look at the dangers of it. When you look at what happened when Facebook was expanded out into Myanmar, right? In over the last couple of years, where they essentially, because they were a media like a media a more far more media illiterate than we are here, right? They essentially, created an ethnic cleansing event because of
Right.
what they did, right? And so I think that like I mean, they've never admitted it, but there's their fingerprints are all over it. But you start looking at it, I think that like that's where things get really dangerous. You get somebody in power that has no morals or qualms about doing that. How can they use these messaging, like you were saying with Amazon, where they know that they know what you want before you want it, right? And they can move the price up and down to get you to buy it, right? If you can apply that to psyops, right? I mean that's terrifying, right?
Hmm. Yeah, it is terrifying. And if without going too far, I mean, I love it
Hmm.
for the science perspective, but taking this full circle back to ROI, the
Hmm.
same thing we're complaining about with I don't like them mapping my kid's brain and marketing the thing to them or to me, right?
Hmm.
At the same time, the double-edged sword of that, the good side of that sword, is it's back to efficiency and ROI. When it reminds me to order a grocery for the kids because I haven't ordered the snacks, right? And we got lunch next week,
Hmm.
that's really helpful, right? That it mapped
Yeah.
me and it knows I need it, right? I
Yep.
can play the game a little bit and like, wow, I really want to buy this thing. We really need it for the house. Too expensive. And it starts dropping the price over the next 3 months because it's
Hmm.
charging me. I can get a better deal, right? So there's some efficiencies too. And that's really, how do we, like anything, how do you mitigate the risk while optimize the benefits of everything?
Hmm.
And back to our governmental design, how are we designed? We've got three eras of change. Internet came, right? Then we had kind of the Internet of Things move along a little more, and now we're in AI. And just go back to something like emails, right? I would love if we had a 1 cent tax on every email. If we actually had police that when they steal my fraudulent information and have my credit card shipped to their little PO box in Massachusetts and they spend 4,000 bucks, there's nothing in place. The internet arrived. Someone can do that. There's no cross-border police, and those people are out there with no accountability, right?
Hmm.
Like that was 25 years ago. We still don't have it figured out. So we
Hmm.
can't figure out the internet, how to police it, how to regulate it, social media, how to police it, how to regulate it, how to protect our kids. And now we're accelerating that into AI. Like we are not set up to figure out any controls or protection for the population for this, right?
Hmm. It's terrifying. Ray, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, I'm
Mhm.
just spitballing here, but you raise a good point, Josh. Like, hasn't it become somewhat self-regulated in a sense? I mean, it's not really regulated, but we're aware of those things now. We've taken, steps to kind of step around those things and see where some of those pitfalls are because there's no central
Hmm.
regulation on that. Are we going to head in the same direction where this AI starts to self-regulate to some extent as we use it more and start to see some of those risks and those pitfalls around it? It's just a thought because to create a rule book or laws around everything that's managed by the central government, and then back to your point, Nick, like could we have bad actors there that start, manipulating those laws to point in particular directions?
Hmm.
Man, it's a thorny subject. But it does seem like there is some level of self-regulation that starts to happen as we learn more about it. It takes a little time, but we learn more, and then as humans, we start to self-regulate in some of those areas.
What about the dynamics of, think about this, right? When we had a tech change or something happen, industrial era for, the 100 years before this one, the internet and then henceforth AI is so cross-border,
Hmm.
right? Again, benefits are shared understanding. You can look stuff up about other people, right? Global humanity, is a concept that we've always wanted for a long time to respect each other, reduce wars, things. At the same time, though, how do you regulate or protect or country sovereignty with AI that's so cross-border. There are no borders, right?
Hmm. Yeah, correct. And I mean, and then you look at data sovereignty and how like, like Google just shuffle your data around in data centers without you knowing. And then like all of a sudden it's under different rules, and it gets treated differently and it can get grabbed into, yeah. So absolutely, there's a lot that goes into that. And and it's also really interesting when you see, like more authoritarian regimes over the world and how they try to lock everything down. Like North Korea is a great example
Mhm.
of something that has locked down internet access largely, and doesn't allow the population to have it just to maintain that level of control.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, again, it's just it's fascinating thought of like, do you want to control people through it or let people like, or does like letting people have access to it control, how does that kind of change the dynamic, I just find it fascinating. No real thoughts on it, but like, if you
It's
guys want
hard
to,
to come up with a definitive on this, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess there are some like, basic moral things that need to be regulated,
mhm,
right? But
yeah,
how do they push products to you? How do we cross borders?
mhm,
That stuff's still up in the air.
yeah, it's fascinating. Josh, anything to add on that or no?
No, I mean, I don't have a good feeling on it yet, right?
Mhm,
And then, there's so many efficiencies that we found with multinational corporations, right? They can make longer supply chains,
mhm,
get resources that are cleaner from there rather than dirty resources from here. There's so many efficiencies from multinational corporations, that I've got to think that there's something out there that um, AI has to be similar, that maybe if it can make kind of the same background, same directives, right, for the benefit of something, some way it's going to be captured or regulated, right? Um,
absolutely.
Multinational corporations probably do more for drop in price, increase in access to things for humans than anything else. But we really need them to come to play, and we haven't
Yep.
really talked about that, right? Because AI is so enabling at an individual and local level and small company level, but we can't count on the government, and we don't want them to regulate everything.
Mhm.
We really need the large companies to make some stands too. That's going to be absolutely critical, right, for self-regulation and to optimize this new technology for the world, right?
100%. Absolutely. Ray, anything to
Makes a
add to
lot of,
that?
no, that makes a lot of sense, Josh. I mean, I think those private companies can put key stakes in the ground around these things there, and there will be precedents set through the way that they manage and handle things that the world will naturally naturally follow without it having to be regulated. It'll just be a stake in the ground. This is how we do this. Of
Yeah.
course, we need good role model corporations to do that, corporations that we inherently trust to be able to do that. But I absolutely agree. I think that's a good step in the
Yeah.
right direction to figuring out this conundrum that is AI benefit and risk.
Mhm.
One of the things that I'm most excited about, coming back to this theme of ROI, right, is, we started to see a lot of democratization of certain things and capabilities over the last 20, 30 years, right? Let's take, I can literally buy a machine right now. I can feed empty aluminum cans into it and I can have it mold for me window frames. I could start that business in my garage. I could put it in the middle of Africa, right? Where I know they got aluminum Coke cans somewhere in there, right? So there's some tech things have gotten smaller, right? And so now I think AI, again, we talk about the cost of all these data centers. If I can get the entirety of human knowledge down to a local level too, how much more micro production can we have that has savings with long supply chains, that has savings for efficiency, that has unique ways to, hey, I need to, fix my little power generator here so I can work longer at night or do something, right? I think the democratization of human knowledge in one touch of a stroke or on a phone this big, tied to advancements in manufacturing and localization of that, is going to have massive efficiencies that, again, back to this resource offset with these water draws, data centers, things like that, there's going to be something that develops there, right? And it may be exponentially, right? Exponential growth, exponential savings in some ways if you take the entirety of humanity's knowledge and put it at everyone's fingertips, right?
And Josh, on that point, like think about those like impoverished nations that don't have access to, let's say, the education levels that we have today, and making that level of capability available to some of those kids and those people that can now go and ask this resource questions that's got a huge amount of the world's knowledge synthesized into it. It's gonna lift up many people across the globe who now have access to knowledge that they never had access to before. We've seen it with the internet,
Yeah.
but it's gonna accelerate even more with AI being, how do I do this? How do I handle this situation? Well, let me just go and ask AI, and it'll give me the world's knowledge to be able to address this, even although I only have grade 6 at school because I had to work in the fields because that's what my family needed. It's a fascinating thought.
Yeah, let me give you a funny example, right? So, I made my kids watch this show that you guys might remember. It was called MacGyver,
Hmm.
right? You
Yes.
seen that
The
show,
old
right?
one or
It's
the new
like
one?
the old one, right? The old one. It's got like duct tape and the Swiss Army knife, right? It's
Hmm.
like, oh, what's in the room that I gotta escape from, right? So, I took my kids and I made them watch an episode. They thought it was pretty cool. I'm like, now think about this. You have MacGyver, right, inside your phone or inside the little Google device in the home. So I'm like, you can take some and say, hey, I have these materials. I need to do this. How can I do that with these materials? And let's see
Right.
what happens, right? And they were like trying to make a little catapult, right, out of like popsicle sticks and some other stuff, right, for to attack his Lego castle. But the point is, it's like that's the problem solving. I could be at the ends of the earth and be like, hey, this is what I got. I need something that generates power off of the materials right here in my village. What does it tell me, right? Like that's where we are. Like that's super powerful, right?
It is. But on that, I mean, also just to add to that, how important do you think it is that folks that are doing that are actually not just blindly accepting what it's telling them and challenging it and like thinking through like, is this actually right? Is this real? Whether it's an answer or how to do something or how to build something or like anything. Like, what do you guys think around that?
Yeah, it's a challenging mindset. I mean, Josh made me think of kind of like a home renovation project. Like you used to go on Google or YouTube and look at, how do I plumb a shower floor in, right? And you'd follow some guy on YouTube and do that. And hopefully it was code for your area when you did it. Now you're going to go for a step-by-step instruction, and ChatGPT is going to walk you through it, or Gemini, whatever you're using, and it's gonna walk you through that. But then you've got to challenge that. Like you can
Mhm.
challenge that and say, I'm in Washington State. Is this to code in my state? And it's that
Mhm.
challenging, or back to Josh's asking the right question.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's so important. Like when in the YouTube thing, it was like a step change of note because I would have had to call somebody in before. Now I'm doing stuff myself. It's awesome, but I couldn't challenge that analog material with any questions. Now I can start to challenge and say, where did you get this from? How do you know this? And
Mhm.
then it's back to the training people to actually challenge AI. Like, tell me why. Why did you come up with that?
Mhm.
Why do you think this is accurate? I think we've all seen it at times go, whoops, I got that wrong.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. Right. But you got to challenge it. You got to challenge it.
Let me tell you my most yeah, I think I agree with the challenges. That's why I like those links in there in case I need to go
Yeah.
deeper. Let me tell you my most recent prompt, right, from yesterday, my ask why question. It's like, I am located in West Lafayette, Indiana, and I like to keep my house at 69 degrees inside.
Mhm.
Upon inspection, I discovered that I only had 4 inches of insulation in my attic, and they recommended a much more, like 14 inches. Take this back to the R ratings that are optimal for my place in the country and the temperature I want my house. What type of insulation? Roll, fluff, foam, and at what R level should I go for the cost versus the benefit and cost savings over time? And it told me, it gave me an answer, right? And so I'm literally saving energy for the world by putting in the most optimal R rating, right? But I'm not just going all the way to the top either because I'm mitigating the current price of installation too by giving me just the right amount, just the right type for the best offset and overall ROI from that investment, right?
Mhm.
That's a kind of a weird, it's all about this pretty complicated prompt and question, but also that's going to save the planet like tons of energy, right? Over the course of the next 80 years of my house, right?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that's kind of the example of like it all comes back to the why and the problem solving, right? And giving it all those variables, right? Teaching us how to ask why. I think that's the core fundamental question when you're talking ROI or you're talking about, what to train my kids.
Yeah,
We've got to teach them how to ask and frame all the questions and get all the variable questions in there so it brings in the right variables, right?
100%.
And Josh, that's why I think AI is not going to make us dumber.
Yeah.
Because while we are not going to necessarily have to know certain things, we're going to have to learn other critical thinking elements
Hmm.
to be able to decipher, like, is this right? Do I want to do this? Apply our human judgment
Hmm.
to that
Hmm.
um, element there. So it's just going to like shift that thinking from one skill set that we had that we were taught from school now to a new skill set that we need, which is that asking why, being critical, asking those important questions, testing that output. That's kind of where our smarts are going to need to be. And of course, we're going to be so much more productive with the technology as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Do you guys
Great.
worry that go ahead, Josh.
Well, I was just going to ask Ray, as you're talking to customers through your company, how are you guys like in real world pitching the ROI of your system?
Yeah, so time saving is a massive part of what we pitch. I mean, it has to be. It's a tangible ROI number. We also pitch win rates increased because if I'm bidding on the right stuff, if I'm more accurate, Nick, if I'm more personalized in the way that I'm doing that, I'm going to win more. So those are the primary two factors that we pitch into that. Where we're also seeing like serious ROI numbers come through is just capturing organizational knowledge and being able to reuse that in a more broad context. If you
Hmm.
think about RFPs, they contain some of your very best organizational knowledge that you capture. You're responding to these RFPs, responding to these questions. So you're
Hmm.
growing this knowledge base that AI can then kind of build off and work from.
Hmm.
Um, and then less of a hard ROI calculation, but back to that just human element of it, we're definitely promoting the shift of less time doing the SME type stuff you spoke about earlier, and more time doing the things that we're really great at as humans, being creative, developing relationships,
Hmm.
critical thinking on these areas, and inventing good components. These are things that AI is not able to perform yet. So we're promoting that shift in that direction.
Absolutely. I do you guys ever worry that access to these tools will make people like less intellectually curious and just like a little or I'd say more intellectually lazy, or do you think that kind of rate will stay the same and just different people will have different, say different experiences with these systems?
I think people are already lazy.
I agree.
And so it's just the path least resistance efficiency, right? And so to look up something in a dictionary and then have to like bring up the other volume, right? And look it up again, right? That's physically or even online, do the research. They're
Hmm.
just not going to do it. They're only going to go one order deep, maybe. So I'm finding that it gets them better answers and allows them to research and build their body of knowledge for better decisions, right? With less work, right? So if path of least resistance, nicer way to say lazier,
Yeah.
is a human condition, AI is actually going to make us make better decisions and better and perform better
Hmm.
and account for that, right?
And
And
I just, oh, sorry, did I interrupt
that
you,
was
Josh?
just that's just my opinion, right?
Yeah. I love that point about, humans are already lazy. I think if people are lazy, they will continue to be lazy.
Hmm.
But if they're not by nature, they're going to be able to do a lot more in the same time that they used to take to do uh, other things. I think it's a more like it's a human nature thing or an individual thing versus a kind of human. well, across everyone that will go in that direction. And I had another thought now that actually just went out of my head as I said that. But yeah, I do think that there's this element of laziness that's inherent in certain people, and they're just going to continue to
Mhm.
apply that human nature.
Yeah. As and so and I know obviously Ray, your company helps write proposals, right? And that we all know that there's organizations using AI to, read proposals and score them initially, right? And I know it's kind of early still in this, but when do you, at what point do you think like the RFP itself becomes an outdated interface?
That is such a great question, Nick. And like that's a question that I think about very, very often because we've got a business built around, responding to RFPs.
Mhm.
Here's my take on it. I think it's different per industry, right? Some industries are very transactional in the types of questions you're going to get in an RFP, and others are less so. I believe that when it comes to transactional type RFPs, where they're asking you things like, "What's your data? Where's your data center located? Are you SOC 2 compliant?" You don't need a human to kind of go find the answer to that question, put it in an Excel spreadsheet for another human to read that. One agent on the buy side can ask that question of an agent on the sell side. And if we trust the agent, those two can just figure that stuff out and score it and rank it and rate it. What I don't see going away anytime soon is the executive summary or the come into my office and pitch this solution to me and tell me why you're the best vendor to do this job. Particularly in industries that are more professional services industries, they need to feel the human presence in the deal, right, to buy successfully. So I think the RFP, many of those elements ultimately get computed and get handled agent to agent, but the selling element of that
Mhm.
stays human in those more relationship-based industries. And it'll be different for commoditized industries where you're buying a widget and you just want to get it done, or you're buying 20,000 widgets, and really what matters is, do you comply and do you have the best price?
Mhm.
That's a different space. Maybe that, goes agent to agent faster. I'm not really sure, but we play mainly in the professional services space.
Man, you mentioned the way you said that caused me to go back to, there's some fundamental things that humans, right? I think oftentimes pathways resistance, right? I think of like human things that I've seen that across every culture and all the countries and places I've operated are, can I make it? Can I survive to the next day? Can I make a better life for my family, right? Put food on the table, right? It's things like that. Another one is negotiation, right?
Mhm.
Everything is a negotiation. Essentially, that AI on Amazon, it's just enabling human negotiation, right? I think about how I use it, right? Whether I prep for a client, right? Whether I do background, right? Even if, say, that I am researching to convince my kids that the place I want to go on vacation is better than, something else they want to do, and that there's a tons of kid stuff to do for the place I want to go, right? It's a negotiation. So how it arms us for negotiation, which is a thing that happens every time you make a transaction in the grocery store, every time you share time with your spouse, your kids, it's a huge enabler for the person that can use it for negotiation, right?
Yeah.
And maybe to get to better decisions too, right? If both people are using it and do the research, sometimes you unprove yourself. No, that vacation would suck for my kids, right? Like, dang. Okay, like
Yeah.
we'll do that one, right? So
Josh, I love that one. And I think it also comes back to that whole, are we going to get lazier or less smart over time? Like our skill set will not be about researching and finding everything we know to arm us for the negotiation. Our skill set will be using that data to do the negotiation. It's
Mhm.
kind of like flipped around right now. I spent so much time preparing for the negotiation, but do I have the skill set to negotiate that well? Now we're going to really focus on that negotiation skill set. And the rest of the stuff will be handed to us. Is how do we use that data in the negotiation?
yeah.
And I think that this is an interesting case where you see that. as we implement AI and it continues to improve and continues to get better, there are just societal systems that we've set up that are, in place that are just, outmoded and they feel old. They're outdated, right? Can you guys think of any other ones that, beyond like RFPs, things that are just not needed anymore
Mm,
as society changes?
wow.
Mm.
Well, we could fast forward to like 15 years from now, and they're gonna be like
Yeah.
driving steering wheels in cars.
Hmm. Yeah.
Right now that's uh that's interesting. I can argue um, what's more valuable, running a public library or ensuring that there's Wi-Fi across the city so kids in every household could access AI or the internet.
Hmm.
Question mark, right? What's a better resource investment, right? Um, that's a silly example. And I was like, well, it's a place where we go. It's a place to interact, right?
Hmm.
It's super important, but you may design the library differently, right? If
Yeah.
that's the true intent of the library, right? If it's human knowledge and getting stuff out there, like these are some basic assumptions that massive resource allocation different way of looking at the world. Where does the city invest? What do the kids need, right? What do your underprivileged kids need for as far as access to it to help them advance, right? I think, AI is one of those things that it may end up challenging every assumption or way we operate in life, right? And at least if we don't make a change there, we validate it for values, culture, societal reasons, or that one's okay, we're going to keep that. It's more efficient, or less efficiency is actually optimal for this type of environment, right? So it's going to be something that you've got to evaluate AI against almost everything in life that's happening right now.
I also think that we're going to reach this point where we're going to celebrate imperfection as well, right? I think about the fact that I got records, downstairs, like vinyl records.
Yeah.
Why do I have vinyl records? I can go to Spotify and get a song perfect. I can get a CD and get a beautiful. But I love the crackle sound
Mhm.
on that thing. I love the fact that there might be a buildup of fluff on that vinyl record there. I mean, why don't we print all of our art? It'll be perfect if we just printed it. And no, we like the imperfection. We like to see the human element in art that we're looking at. And I think that those things are going to survive now. Like, you know, cataloging the art or cataloging what I have in my record collection. AI can take care of that and, build those spreadsheets for me. There's no passion associated with that. But the human imperfection piece that we have, there's something great about that. And I think we're gonna look for those things more and
Right.
more.
I was worried about that with football, right? I love watching football, right?
Yeah.
As maybe you do too. I think there's a game coming
Yeah.
up you're interested
Oh,
in,
well, just a
right?
little game coming up on Sunday.
Little game,
Yeah,
right?
just a
Coming up.
little game. Someone's throwing
Yeah.
some ball around. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was thinking about it, and it's like Amazon empowering the NFL with data analytics and AI,
Yeah.
right? I was like, oh man, are coaches just going to use AI to call every play? And is it purely based on probability? I love technology super empowering humans, right? I love that they kind of stop the door, right? I don't want us to play football with robots, right? Going at each other. Like, yeah, it can super empower, but there's still people on the field, the imperfections, the mistake, the concentration glitches, right? The injuries, the personal problems at home that transferred and made it onto the field, and the guy can't catch the ball, whatever it is, right? There's still AI around it, and we know there's big data happening around it, but we watch because we love the imperfections. We love the chance. We love the will, right?
Yes. Yeah. And we live vicariously ourselves through those things. You sit and watching the football game, and the next minute you moving yourself, almost like you're on the football field there. Well, you obviously not, but you're living vicariously through those people on that field there. It's an awesome feeling, win or lose.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
I'm
how you
embarrassed to say that I may have been thrown off the treadmill a few times,
Mhm.
including for the running back. So I cannot run on the treadmill while watching football anymore. Right? Whoa, I'm that guy,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. No, but
So,
I'm with you.
yeah.
I love the thought that that the imperfections are what going to drive us still like that. Because I'm with you. I love. I love that. I think that you're absolutely right, though. There will be no steering wheels in cars one day. I think that it's just like I'm not even I don't think again this is one of those third order of magnitude things where we have no real idea of how everything is going to change, or and how much is going to change. I think anybody that's predicting anything beyond like 3 years out just is they have no idea, right? um, because of it being such a feedback loop where it feeds into itself. And there's just like if there were no steering wheels in cars, right? Would we even need traffic enforcement cops, right? Things like that, where it's like maybe they should just go solve actual crimes instead of like, because if the robots are doing all the driving,
Yep. What if you
Yeah.
don't need stoplights anymore, right? Like,
right?
how much does that save for resources, infrastructure, metal,
Mhm.
energy to make it, right?
And also, how much more beautiful does that road suddenly become if it doesn't have a giant stoplight hanging over the top of it? Like
Mhm.
there's other benefits to that. Now it starts to look more attractive again. We're just not blocking up stuff.
Right.
Uh,
I
yeah.
do want to put out a disclaimer though. I don't want my car to be autonomous because I love driving. So,
Oh, I
uh,
do too. I
yeah.
do. It's so
But
cathartic, man. Like
anyway,
I love.
just a side note, right? Like, but I'm
Mhm.
happy to put my kids in it to take them to school in the morning.
Right.
Yeah, exactly,
So,
Yeah.
Josh.
That think about how much time that would save you, right? Then there's
That could
so
be a
many more.
generational thing, though. I
Hmm.
wonder if that's not a generational thing. My kids are driving now. Their friends, if they have access to autonomous driving, their friends are driving autonomously now. They'd rather hand the wheel over to the car to drive
they
than
want time back for productivity.
right.
Yeah.
But I love driving, so
Yeah.
I use self-drive like a fraction of the time
Hmm.
that I could because I enjoy the tactile elements of driving. But I
Right.
think there's other generations that are gonna be like, I don't want to mess around with driving. That's
Hmm.
boring. I want to
Yeah.
be on whatever else things
I,
happening.
I
I
like
can
driving.
hear the conversation right now, just like my parents are like, no, you've got to learn how to drive a manual car in case you
Hmm.
need to drive one someday. I'm like, nope, you got to learn how to drive instead of just autonomous driving in case you drive a car someday,
Right.
right?
Absolutely. And there's a lot less of us that know how to drive a stick shift now because I mean, how often do you see them? You know what I mean? And it's like one of the reasons I like driving is it's something you're doing that you have to focus on and it kind of frees your mind to wander. And that's where I get a lot of really good ideas in the car as a
Yeah,
result of that. I tend to come up with ideas when I'm not thinking about the problem.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So I just think it's absolutely cool. Guys, this has been a fantastic conversation. Is there anything else you guys we should, cover? Anything else you guys want to bring up? Before we, get ready to wrap up here? Because this has been super interesting.
I like the point, Nick, that we're right at the start of this journey, right? I think that's we don't have the answers, and I think we've hypothesized around a few things in this great conversation that we've had today. But I think Josh also said it's inevitable, right? It's going to happen, and
Hmm.
we've got to be really prepared, aware, thinking carefully about what we do and our place in this space that's now evolving. People that have experience, that have responsibilities. We've got to be really intentional and thoughtful about how we pursue this next era because we are going to set things up for the generation that doesn't want to drive themselves. And there's a big responsibility on us as kind of the founding generation of this technology.
Josh.
Yeah, I just got two walkaways. One is it's going to take individuals, it's going to take companies, and it is going to have to take a piece of government, probably, right? We all need to think about it at all three of those levels because it is that impactful to humanity and the planet. And then the last thing, kind of the theme we've had is, humans do questions, and questions are the highest level of thought, right? And super empowering people to make the right questions, right? And let all the research somebody else do that. I'm fine with that. But yeah, humans do questions. Start with
Awesome.
why.
Love it. I love it. Ray, Josh, thank you so much for joining, guys. This has been an awesome conversation. I've really had a lot of fun.
Thank you,
Cool.
Nick. Thank you,
All right.
Josh.
See
Everybody,
you.
thank you so much for listening to Robots and Red Tape, and I hope you're having a great day.